Welcome to my podcast on the topic of IRS tax debt relief options. I am a CPA entitled to represent taxpayers in any of the 50 states in representation matters before the IRS, including tax notice letters, audits, appeals, statutory notice of deficiency issues, et al. Over 10 million notices a year are issued by the IRS. A large number of taxpayers receive IRS audit notices. 250,000 taxpayers a year decide to pursue offers in compromise, and 25,000 taxpayers a year proceed to U.S. tax court because they've received a statutory notice of deficiency. 99.2% of them don't make it for a good reason. Their case is either settled or dismissed before it reaches the court. That's why pro se representation, representing yourself with a measure of professional assistance, such as a CPA to prepare exhibits, handle analysis of complex issues, recommend negotiation strategies, write memos of facts, explanations of case history, and so forth, is such a valuable combination of strategies. I have background in auditing, and I'm a researcher and a writer. I've written a book as well. You can buy it on Amazon and other platforms. The IRS Tax Debt Survival Guide is a practical, plain English roadmap for taxpayers facing audits, notices, back taxes, liens, levies, or U.S. tax court proceedings. You can find it on Amazon. It provides real-world insight, step-by-step guidance. My firm's name is Tax Options LLC. It's a Wyoming LLC. You can just enter the keyword Tax Options LLC on Google or Bing, and my site will come up right away. I, of course, have a YouTube channel with a variety of videos. At the end of this presentation, I normally provide my email address, but here it is right now, jtgrenou@aol.com. That's jtgrenou@aol.com. So this podcast will delve into some topics when the IRS comes knocking, a guide to enforce collection. Now, the bottom line rule with the IRS, they don't operate by Marquis of Queensberry rules. As my father used to say, between us girls, you know what that means. So professional representation is always advised. Let's start with the truth. Nobody wakes up that is excited to check the mail and see if they got mail from the IRS. And those whose letters keep coming, thicker, colder, more serious, something shifts, because now it's no longer about paperwork, it's about survival. Today we're talking about an enforced collection by the IRS, what it is, how it happens, and what you can do if you don't understand it. It always starts quietly. IRS enforcement doesn't begin with agents at your door. It starts quietly with a number. The IRS decides you owe tax. The decision is called an assessment. It might come from a return you filed. It might come from a correction they made, or it might come because you never filed at all and they did it for you. Once that number is locked in, the clock starts ticking, and the IRS operates, as we all know, under the presumption of correctness. They presume they are correct until you oppose them, analyze it, and present your position. So a letter follows. It says you owe money. It asks you to pay. At this stage, many people freeze, they panic, they ignore it, they tell themselves they'll deal with it later. That's when things get dangerous. The point of no return is the notice of deficiency. That's letter 3219A is in alpha. Sometimes the IRS sends a letter that changes everything. It's formal, it's certified, and it says, we think you owe more than you said. This gives you one last real chance to fight back before paying tax court. You usually get 90 days. Not from when you open the letter, from when the IRS mailed it. Miss that deadline and the IRS doesn't have to argue with you anymore. They assess the tax, they demand payment. Now they have real enforcement power. They start the collection process. And remember, once the tax is unpaid, interest begins to grow daily, relentlessly. It doesn't stop because you're stressed or you can't afford it. It doesn't stop because you didn't understand the system. Interest turns a bad situation into a suffocating one. The lien, the IRS marks its territory. If the tax still isn't paid, the IRS makes its move, a federal tax lien. This is the moment when the government legally claims everything you own and everything you will own, with minor exceptions. The exceptions are usually your house, your car. Even before it's publicly filed, the lien exists. Once it is filed, the damage spreads. Credit scores collapse, loans disappear, refinancing becomes impossible. Selling your property is a nightmare. And yes, your name is now attached to a public record saying you didn't pay the government. You do get a warning, you do get a right to a hearing, but that hearing is only powerful if you act. When a lien isn't enough, sometimes a lien doesn't work. That's when the IRS stops asking. They levy. Now, levy's not a threat. It's not a warning. It's the act itself. Money is taken. Accounts are drained. Paychecks are intercepted. And wages are lost. Once the IRS levies your paycheck, it doesn't stop every pay period again and again until the debt is paid or someone intervenes. There are things that the IRS can't touch: basic clothing, some household items, a small slice of your wages. But the list of what isn't protected is much longer: bank accounts, retirement funds, business assets, and even Social Security, a percentage of it. And in the right circumstances, even a home is not untouchable. The lifeline is collection hearings. Here's the part most people don't realize. Before most levies, the IRS must give you a chance to be heard. A real hearing with a real appeals officer, someone who must weigh whether the IRS is going too far. At that hearing, you can propose payment plans, ask for a settlement, argue hardship, sometimes even challenge the tax itself, but only if you act on time. If you miss the deadline, the door closes. When the IRS takes property, if the IRS seizes property, they don't quietly keep it. They notify you. They advertise the sale. They sell it publicly. And if the sale brings in more than you owe, the extra comes back to you. If it doesn't, the debt still follows you. And in some cases, you might have a short window to buy your property back: short, unforgiving, and final. Levies can end, but only if you push. They don't last forever. They must stop if the tax is paid, or if a payment plan is approved, or if the law says time has run out. That's called a 10-year statute, or the levy is crushing you financially. If the IRS took property incorrectly, it can be returned, but none of this happens automatically. You have to fight for it. The real lesson: IRS enforced collection isn't fast, it isn't flashy, and it isn't merciful. It's a machine. It runs on deadlines, silence, and delay. The longer you wait, the more power it gains. The biggest mistake isn't owing taxes, it's pretending the problem will disappear, because the IRS doesn't disappear. If you're facing enforcement, knowledge is leverage and power. Action is protection, and time is the one thing you don't have to waste. Please subscribe to my channel. Please listen to more podcasts. Contact me as needed. My email address is jtgreneau, my last name, Gren, as in November, OUGH, at AOL.com. My cell phone is area code 727-403-9559. That's a Florida area code. I've lived in Florida for some years. I live on an island off the coast of Florida. My LLC is in Wyoming simply for reasons of corporate ease, but I live in Florida and have lived here for some years. So stay in touch. Have a good day.